Okay. Oh. Alright. Yeah, 400 is... Ooh. Oh, 67. Well, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it hangs. That's a hell of a jump up and down between 600 kilobytes per second and 67. Miserable. Oh no. Hello, Alexander. It has been a while. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a while, but I'm very glad you're back. Have you I don't know where that sentence was gonna go, but I hope you've been well. We'll just wait for everyone else to, do their thing. Come on in, as they do. Oh, also, could you tell me if you can hear me? And also, could you tell me, so I'm gonna say now? Could you tell me when you heard me say now? Oh, yeah, busy. I mean, university does keep you busy. That's one of the thing. Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. We're fine. We're fine. It's fine. But yeah, that's one of the things university is really good at. It's keeping you really busy. Maybe university, it's the only thing that university's good at. Oh dear, oh dear. We should get at least, because 3 people liked it, or did the little shirtless frog hooray emoji. So we should get at least 4 people, hopefully. Mm. The real test is whether Raklos comes in. As soon as Raklos comes in, I'm like, okay, we can start now. I can get onto the preamble now, as soon as Raklos is there. uh... Yes, well, so I was reading the chapter ahead. I'm giving that a go. But I was reading the chapter ahead, and it was just so insane. I needed this energy. I needed this specific energy because the things that Sam says in this chapter are just it's it's beyond belief. It's beyond like you simply cannot tell me that these men didn't love each other romantically. You can't tell me this. Um, so, and like I did this in a frenzy. I couldn't think of any other meme. I couldn't think this was all that was in my head. Absolutely no other possibility of a meme. Also, I've been feeling the 2012 era of Tolkien fandom recently, considering all of the hubbub about Rings of Power. Everyone's being very 2012 about it, including me. Hmm. Eh. KBS feeling very, very and happy. Yes, I have, because I couldn't quite decide which meme I liked best. I did this one, which is more explanatory, compared with this one, which is more meta, I guess. And it doesn't really work, because in the biopic he apparently doesn't have a Batman, but the feeling, the emotion is there, the vibe. Now, I was about no, I was pretty entrenched. I was pretty entrenched by 2012 in fandom spaces. But I was also very wee. So, well, I was like 17? Yes. Yes. 17. Yes. I was 17. I was obnoxious in those spaces, as every 17-year-old has the right to be. So some of the vibe was my fault, most likely. But it's good to only have third hand knowledge about that that time. I would say that's really the way you need to experience 2012 Tolkien fandom. Um, is just one step removed would be best. Hmm. Because Mikey was definitely gonna be here. He said he was gonna be here, and I'm pretty sure Jamie was gonna be here too. Now, well, now, well. Oh, keep waiting. And if we get to 15 minutes in, I guess I'm just reading to you, Alexander. You get a private audience of the song for today as well, which we have, and a private audience of the preamble, which I have lots to say about the preamble. I'm holding it in. It's very hard. I've oh, there's stuff I want to talk about Carl Hostetter. I want to talk about it so bad. I want to talk of, yeah, private Tolkien reading, exactly. Wonder if um wonder if I want to stir the pot enough and actually exactly, yes, it's the opposite of that meme. Yeah. Oh, hello, puppy. Yeah, hello. um, I wonder if I want to stir the pot enough and actually show the full Facebook post Carl Hostetter made that I want to talk about. I think it wasn't a private post, but it was just for who he follows. So I guess that is technically a private post. But somebody, well, no, because no, it can't have been that because it was screen capped by someone on Twitter. I'm pretty sure they aren't friends with him. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and assume that Carl Hostetter isn't friends with that person. I think it's fine. He's yeah, I mean I do too. Is the thing I really do. Let's see. Hmm. I'll wait still. I'll wait still. I'll give it a bit, just in case. Uh, All right, I'll start talking about it now. So, Carl Hostetter, if you don't know, is the author of The Nature of Middle Earth, which is the most recent book to be actually published. That was, a compilation of Tolkien's the. I mean, at this point, it's a compilation of things that Tolkien has written on the backs of receipts that he got when he went down to get his bun of the morning or something. Like, it's truly insane. Reading this book, I have said this many times, but reading The Nature of Middle Earth genuinely feels like I have looked into Tolkien's secret diary. I've pried open the padlock and I am reading his secret diary at this point. Like, the shit that's in there is so I just don't think people wanted I just don't think he wanted people to read it. And certainly that was Christopher Tolkien's view. He did not want this book published, and so Carl Hostetter did notably wait until Christopher was dead before publishing this book. But in the book is this particular section about elven the way elves experience love, essentially, the way elves experience attachment. Um and obviously there is this section that's like, elves experience attachment much stronger than men. Men don't experience the kind of depth of love as elves do, which is more Catholic shit. It's more Catholic bullshit. But the main point about this yeah, yes, exactly. So the main point about this is that in this in this section there is a bit where it talks about affections between male elves for male elves and female elves for female elves. Now, the way this is written, especially if you aren't um so like, you're not so well. No, actually, I don't even. I mean, I get why people are like taking this and being like, Tolkien said that Tolkien's saying that elves can be gay. Tolkien said elves can be gay. Um, I get why people are taking it that way. Because it's exciting. It does. There's like a it's an interesting, like, show of Tolkien actually acknowledging, even offhandedly, the idea that gay people exist. However, it is homophobic. Like, I need everybody to understand he's doing this for homophobic reasons. His whole point about putting this in the book is to be like, elves don't experience, like, sexual attraction to the same gender sexual attraction. Obviously, that's sinful and terrible. But some people, men can have the same kinds of emotional bonds to each other as could happen in marriage, except for that last part, which is sexual, which is not allowed. Like, it's about trying to codify affections between same gender affection that is, what's the word, holy, saintly, etc., etc. Like, it's very creepy. um and and it's kind of irritating to me, because a lot of people have, especially on Twitter, they do this thing where, I'll get to that actually later. The actual point is that people were doing this and they were being really excited about it. There's like names, there's Melatorny and Melathorny or something like that, and they gave them like what could, at a glance, be considered terms that elven terms for gay and lesbian. They're not. It's very important. They're not that, but could easily be, because it's like a relationship where two men are very affectionate with each other, a relationship where two women are very affectionate with each other. So people went on to Reddit, and there were people on Twitter, and they were all talking about it and they were getting very excited. And then Carl Hostetter came along And I actually am. I'm gonna upload the whole post. He made a post. Where did I put it? Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, wait, no. Where did I put it? Oh, I remember. I made a new thing. There we go. Okay. No? Yeah, there it is. What? Yeah, it's just a JPEG. What? Hang on. Come on. Yeah, come on. Well, this is very annoying. Come on. It's just a JPEG. You can look at a JPEG. You can see a JPEG. Are you not gonna like that? No? This is very... What's this? Oh. Oh. What? What the... What? Okay, that's very strange. It's very annoying. I can see it. It's right here in front of me. It's right here in front of me. Hang on. And this is in... Yeah, it's in... I'm gonna keep trying. Just a sec. No? Just not in there for some reason? OBS is like, that's not an image, actually. Hello, Danny. Not, you've come in the middle of in the middle of my preamble, but just go away. Eh, eh. I mean, yes. Yes. Well, okay, so this again, I actually don't like The Nature of Middle-earth. I am going to be reading it after I've finished reading Tolkien, but I don't like The Nature of Danny, just to catch you up, we're talking about The Nature of Middle-earth because Carl Hostetter said some things. Carl Hostetter said some things, and I can't believe I'm finding it so difficult to... Because, like, if I just go like this, and then this... Yeah, can I not just... Can I not just do this? Give me a second. Oh wait, no, actually, this because I downloaded this from Twitter. That's what it is. So, and they do all kinds of things to image files. So I will do it this way. Okay, so should be working. Hang on. Eh. Here it is. Here's the start of it anyway. Here's the start of his Facebook post. I wonder whether Christopher Tolkien ever had the experience of seeing his work and words twisted into meaning the exact opposite of what they actually mean. A portion of my book, The Nature of Middle-earth, was recently made available by way of preview. Yes, this all happened during the preview bit. Some people and news outlets have already seized upon this quote as indicating that there were homosexual elves. Okay. And then I think, and then like he says the quote, he does the quote, and then he says, Then he says... Eh, eh. Note that Tolkien specifically excludes sexuality from the meaning of mel. He says rather that men might call mel friendship, but that it was felt with greater strength and warmth and permanency than what men call friendship. As such, mel is closer in meaning to devotion and dedication than to mere friendship. And think of Sam and Frodo, which is actually why I decided to do this preamble, because we need to think about Sam and Frodo. Let's think about Sam and Frodo in these connotations and read how he describes Sam and Frodo. Cause anyway, but yeah, so think of Sam and Frodo when you think about this. But and again, it has nothing to do with either romance or sexual desire. The fact that the left, capitalized, clearly equates love with sex speaks volumes about their mindset. It has nothing at all to do with what Tolkien actually wrote. Does anyone here think that the left will ever be persuaded of this fact? So obviously we know, like, he's being pretty clear. Like we know what's going on here. We get what he just we know what he just said. Like we don't have to beat about the bush about this. Like obviously he yes, the use of the word homosexual also very specific. We get what Carl Hostetter thinks. Like full on, very clear, big letters, neon sign. I am a homophobe and I do not like gay people. All right, Carl, we get you. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about in this section about this is that, like, well, obviously, yeah, yes, homophobe, Carl Hostetter, reason why I haven't actually bought the book in the first place. Um, the next thing the next thing that happened was a lot of people were like came onto this. Obviously they started talking about this a while back, and I mean it didn't get very big, but the people who were talking about it I also had a frustration with, because like the first thing that they started saying was a lot of people were like, oh, you're just ascribing you why do you always think that gay people are sexual? Why like he's the one making it sexual. That's him doing that. He's the one making it sexual. Everyone, what about asexual gay people, etc., etc. And like, yes, somewhat of a good point. I do agree. But like it's like, do people not like also even if they had been making it sexual, it would not be like gay sex also good. Like gay sex also fine. Is like the fact is that while Carl Hostetter was making it sexual for sure, even what he's saying is gay sex ooh. Like that's what he's saying. He's saying gay sex ick. Like that's what his point is in this whole thing. He's like, why are you horny gay people with your evil gay sex coming into my pure Tolkien Wilderland and making elves gay? Like that's what he's saying. And and if the answer to that is don't worry, we're not making it sexual, we also think that gay people can be pure and good and have relationships that are intense and good without that nasty gay sex. It's not exactly repelling the original point, or like so what, yes, exactly. So what if all elves had gay sex every day? Sounds like a good time. Sounds like they wouldn't. They're not cool enough. But that's like it's it's an irritation that I have with the current discourse. It's a frustration that I have that I wanted to preamble about, especially because we're about to come to one of the gayest chapters in the whole book, arguably. Truly insane amount of shit that goes on that is gay in this one. So and like we I mean, so we have Danny. Apparently we have a third viewer, but Danny, did you hear from Jamie and Mikey if they were going to be and Raklos if they were going to be coming? Take your time. It'll be another. I don't know where. I don't know how like long the delay is by now, but I think it might be quite long. But yes, so Cole Hostetter is a homophobe, not a surprise. And don't worry, Danny. um, um, yes, Cole Hostetter a homophobe, not a surprise, but also people seem to want to let that one go for some reason. Like they want like it's almost as if the conversation they want to have with him is just to reassure him, just to be like, no, no, don't worry, we hate gay sex also. Like, if you could see the problem here, it's a little bit uncomfortable. But so I mean, if anybody wanted to go on to the Discord and ask if people were gonna were thinking of coming in, but I mean, it's and again, with the note that it's fine if they don't. I really am happy to read for just the two of you. I don't want to necessarily start unless people want to come in. Uh, but it's fine. It's absolutely fine. I do genuinely do these streams just for me. I like to listen back to them quite a lot. that would be that would be good. You could plagiarize his book entirely and then just get to that section and be like just change the bit that said that it wasn't about sex to it fully is about sex. It fully is about sex. Elves had gay sex all the time. Um, I think that would help. I think that would be good for everybody. I think that would be good for him. I think it would be good for him because then he'd be able. He like I think people just need to have the phrase gay sex more in their lives, and then they'll just get used to it. They'll just get used to it. The issue is I cannot go into the Discord because any draw on my internet will horribly affect the stream. So terrible. Gay sex exposure therapy, exactly. Exactly. He wasn't singing you heard in Rivendell all the time. I that is one of the things that I find very funny about especially like fan fiction that has to do with Rivendell. Thank you, Danny. It has like a lot of the fan fiction from Rivendell is like they be boning everywhere. And if you look and if you like read about it, it just doesn't feel like there are very strong or thick walls in that place. It feels and looks like there are windows everywhere. I don't know how you can keep. I think everybody. I think if you have a relationship in Rivendell, you've made that relationship everybody who lives in Rivendell's business as well. So it's it's always very funny to me. Like Legolas and Aragorn just boning all over the place. I read a fanfiction once where Aragorn and Gandalf had they burned down in the baths, and I'm like, it echoes in there, surely. you, you have to... Elf magic... Oh, I see. I saw elf magic sound, and my brain went in a completely different direction. Yes, but yes, the way you meant it, yes, elf, yes, they have magic sound canceling technology. It actually inside River, it just looks like a YouTuber's background. It's just all with full of those foam stuff. Yes, Aragorn. That is not the weirdest. That's not the weirdest pairing. That's not the weirdest pairing, even in Rivendell. Aragorn and Gandalf, like, there's something going on between those two, and that's all I'm saying. Gandalf left Denethor because he was cheating on him with Aragorn. I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it. I haven't. I need to finish the other fanfic, the more important fanfiction I have, and then I will write the Gandalf Glorfindel fanfic from Lotro. You just need to. You don't need me to write it though. Just get to level 130, and go, go to the Mordor Besieged yourself, and you'll see. It's all there. But no, it's yes. I mean, Ian McKellen is. I mean, this is the thing. Ian McKellen can do whatever the hell he wants. Gandalf, on the other hand, I do hold up because Gandalf's homophobic, so he's a real hypocrite. He's a real hypocrite. Gandalf. His whole relationship with Denethor was desperately telling himself that this was um a Melitorny situation. He was like, no, of course, I have completely normal affection for this man, despite the fact that he hated him. It was more difficult for Gandalf to deal with his weird obsession with Denethor because he hated him and so couldn't claim the whole, oh, we have such a special gentle bond. We have such a special, kind, loving bond that is very familial and like marriage, but without the sex part. He couldn't say that because he hated Denethor and Denethor hated him back, but they also were like weirdly obsessed with each other. So psychosexual issues that they had. and then Gandalf fell in love with Aragorn, and he was like, "Oh, this is a real one," and I'll. But no, it's very hypocritical of him. Very hypocritical. You should speedrun your Bjorning from level 25 to level 100 in 1 week. I mean, you have a Valar. Well, actually, hang on. Do you have a Valar, or do you need to be VIP to get all the Valars? But don't do that. Don't do that. I'm not telling you to do that. Do not Valar your Bjorning. Very bad idea. Right. You know what? It's been half an hour. I think we're gonna get started. We're gonna get started. Let's read the gayest chapter in this book. Kat said he would be joining later, so we'll see. So this is the Tower of Kirit Ungol. Because we left everybody at the gates of the Black Gate, and with our wonderful, fantastic how fantastic the mouth of Sauron. Yes, that's exactly what you should do. Leave them there until there's a moment where you're like, wow, I really want a new character that is this level that I have either that I've played before or that I'm not really interested in being good at. And I've already played all the way up there multiple times. When you get that urge, then maybe you can use one of the boost you to level 120 Valors, but before then, you don't even think about them. But this is book 5 though. Wait, 6. Yes, this is book 6. So this is technically chapter 1 of book 6. Ugh. Let's switch to the stream. Sam roused himself painfully from the ground. For a moment he wondered where he was, and then all the misery and despair returned to him. He was in the deep dark outside the undergate of the Orcs' stronghold. Its brazen doors were shut. He must have fallen stunned when he hurled himself against them, but how long he had lain there he did not know. Then he had been on fire, desperate and furious. Now he was shivering and cold. He crept to the doors and pressed his ears against them. Far within he could hear faintly the voices of Orcs clamouring, but soon they stopped or passed out of hearing, and all was silent, all was still. His head ached, and his eyes saw phantom lights in the darkness. Oh, he's getting a migraine. Poor man. But he struggled to steady himself and think. It was clear at any rate that he had no hope of getting into the Orc hold by that gate. He might wait there for days before it was opened, and he could not wait. Time was desperately precious. He no longer had any doubt about his duty. He must rescue Frodo, or perish in the attempt. The perishing is more likely, and will be a lot easier anyway, he said grimly to himself, as he unsheathed Sting and turned from the brazen doors. Sorry, sheathed Sting. He put the sword away. We are 5/6 of a way through the book, yes. And we're living on a prayer for sure. Slowly, he groped his way back in the dark along the tunnel, not daring to use the elven light, and as he went he tried to fit together the events since Frodo and he had left the crossroads. He wondered what the time was. Somewhere between one day and the next, he supposed, but even of the days he had quite lost count. He was in a land of darkness, where the days of the world seemed forgotten, and where all who entered were forgotten too. I wonder if they think of us at all, he said, and what is happening to them all the way over there. He waved his hand vaguely in the air before him, but he was in fact now facing southwards, as he came back to Shelob's tunnel, not west. Out westward in the world it was drawing to noon upon the 14th day of March in the Shire reckoning, and even now Aragorn was leading the Black Fleet from Pelagia, and Merry was riding with the Rohirrim down the Stonewain Valley, while in Minas Tirith flames were rising, and Pippin watched the madness growing in Denethor's eyes. Yet amid all their cares and fears, the thoughts of their friends turned constantly to Frodo and Sam. They were not forgotten, but they were far beyond aid, and no thought could yet bring any help to Samwise Hamfast's son. He was utterly alone. Oh, hello, Peaches. No, you didn't miss anything. I've been preambling about homophobic authors this whole time. We only just started. But great to have, and good luck with your dishes, but great to have you in. He came back at last to the stone door of the Orc passage, and still unable to discover the catch or bolt that held it, he scrambled over as before, and dropped softly to the ground. Then he made his way stealthily to the outlet of Shelob's tunnel, where the rags of her great web were still billowing and swaying in the cold airs. For cold they seemed to Sam after the noisome darkness behind, but the breath of them revived him. He crept cautiously out. All was ominously quiet. The light was no more than that of dusk at a dark day's end. The vast vapours that arose in Mordor and went streaming westward passed low overhead, a great welter of cloud and smoke now lit again beneath the sullen glow of red. Sam looked up towards the Orc Tower, and suddenly from its narrow windows lights stared out like small red eyes. He wondered if they were some signal. His fear of the Orcs, forgotten for a while in his wrath and desperation, now returned. As far as he could see, there was only one possible course for him to take. He must go on, and try to find the main entrance to the dreadful tower. But his knees felt weak, and he found that he was trembling. Drawing his eyes down from the tower and the horns of the cleft before him, he forced his unwilling feet to obey him, and slowly, listening with all his ears, peering into the dense shadows of the rock beside the way, he retraced his steps, past the place where Frodo fell, and still the stench of Shelob lingered, and then on up, until he stood again in the very cleft where he had put on the ring and seen Shagrat's company go by. Now, see, that sentence stole all of the commas that he'd allotted for himself, so he can't put them in the rest of this chapter. there is a distinct lack of commas, and I've just realised it's because that sentence took every single one of them. There he halted and sat down. For the moment he could drive himself no further. He felt that if once he went beyond the crown of the pass and took one step veritably down into the land of Mordor, that step would be irrevocable. He could never come back. Without any clear purpose he drew out the ring and put it on again. Immediately he felt the great burden of its weight, and felt afresh but now more strong and urgent than ever, the malice of the Eye of Mordor, searching, trying to pierce the shadows that it had made for its own defence, but which now hindered it in its unquiet and doubt. As before, Sam found that his hearing was sharpened, but that to his sight the things of the world seemed strange and thin, and vague. The rocky walls of the pass were pale, as if seen through a mist, but still at a distance he heard the bubbling of Shelob in her misery. And harsh and clear, and very close it seemed, he heard cries and the clash of metal. He sprang to his feet, and pressed himself against the wall beside the road. He was glad of the ring, for here was yet another company of orcs on the march. Also he thought at first, "Hello, Raklos! Welcome in. We only just started. Again, we were discussing homophobic authors, and that took up a lot of time, as it usually does. Yeah. Also, at first he thought. Then suddenly he realized that it was not so. His hearing had deceived him. The orc cries came from the tower, whose topmost horn was now right above him, on the left hand of the cleft. Sam shuddered and tried to force himself to move. There was plainly some devilry going on. Perhaps, in spite of all the orders, the cruelty of the orcs had mastered them, and they were tormenting Frodo, or even savagely hacking him to pieces. He listened, and as he did so a gleam of hope came to him. There could not be much doubt there was fighting in the tower. The orcs must be at war among themselves. Shagrat and Gorbag had come to blows. Faint was the hope that his guest brought him, but it was enough to rouse him. There might be just a chance. His love for Frodo rose above all other thoughts, and forgetting his peril, he cried aloud, "I'm coming, Frodo!" He ran forward to the crown of the climbing path and over it. At once the road turned left and plunged steeply down. Sam had crossed into Mordor. And that's just... Like, we're not even there yet. We're not even... That's just the first taste of how homoerotic this particular... Well... Yeah, exactly. Gay. Yeah, it's gay. Exactly. He took off the ring. Moved it may be by some deep premonition of danger, though to himself he thought only that he wished to see more clearly. "Better have a look at the worst," he muttered. "No good blundering about in a fog." Hard and cruel and bitter was the land that met his gaze. Before his feet, and the highest ridge of the Efelduath fell steeply in great cliffs down into a dark trough, on the further side of which there rose another ridge, much lower, its edge notched and jagged with crags like fangs that stood out black against the red light behind them. It was the grim Morgai, the inner ring of the fences of the land. Far beyond it, but almost straight ahead, across a wide lake of darkness dotted with tiny fires, there was a great burning glow, and from it rose a huge column of swirling smoke, dusk red at the roots, black above where it emerged into the billowing canopy that roofed in all the accursed land. Sam was looking at Orodruin, the mountain of fire. Ever and anon the furnace far below its ashen cone would grow hot, and with a great surging and throbbing pour forth rivers of molten rock from chasms in its sides. Some would flow blazing towards Barad-dûr down great channels. Some would wind their way into the stony plain until they cooled and lay like twisted dragon shapes vomited from the tormented earth. In such an hour of labour Sam beheld Mount Doom, and the light of it, cut off by the high screen of the Efelduath, from those who climbed up the path from the west, now glared against the stark rock faces, so that they seemed to be drenched with blood. Lovely. In that dreadful light Sam stood aghast, for now, looking to his left, he could see the tower of Kirit Ungul in all its strength. The horn that he had seen from the other side was only its topmost turret. Its eastern face stood up in 3 great tiers from a shelf in the mountain wall far below. Its back was to a great cliff behind, from which it jutted out in pointed bastions, one above the other, diminishing as they rose, with sheer sides of cunning masonry that looked northeast and southeast. About the lowest tier, 200 feet below where Sam now stood, there was a battlemented wall enclosing a narrow court. Its gate, upon the near southeastern side, opened on a broad road, the outer parapet of which ran upon the brink of a precipice until it turned southward and went winding down into the darkness to join the road that came over the Morgul Pass. Then on it went through a jagged rift in the Morgai out into the valley of Gorgoroth and away to Barad-dûr. narrow upperway on which Sam stood leapt swiftly down by stair and steep path to meet the main road under the frowning walls close to the tower gate. As he gazed at it, suddenly Sam understood, almost with a shock, that this stronghold had been built not to keep enemies of Mordor out, but to keep them in. It was indeed one of the works of Gondor long ago, an eastern outpost of the defences of Ithilien, made when, after the last alliance, men of Westerness kept watch on the evil land of Sauron where his creatures still lurked. But as with Narcost and Carcost, the Towers of the Teeth, so here too the vigilance had failed, and treachery had yielded up the tower to the Lord of the Ringwraiths, and now for long years it had been held by evil things. And we have to talk about this. Because he just said he just we keep bumping between this there's the narrative where it's like, oh, they were just lazy, and they stopped the vigil on Mordor, and the vigil failed because they were lazy. Apparently, it was treachery. Apparently for this specific one, for Kirit Ungol, the tower was taken through betrayal. Like Gondor was betrayed by somebody, or by indeed themselves. There was some kind of betrayal that happened, which isn't laziness. And if it's combined with a plague, exactly, it's very high effort. Treachery, it takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of energy to betray people. I think it's a doing activity. So how and if it's combined with a plague, how is it? How is this laziness that how is Gondor growing indolent? Anyway, that's the first thing I had to talk about. Since his return to Mordor, Sauron had found it useful, for he had few servants but many slaves of fear, and still its chief purpose as of old was to prevent escape from Mordor. Though if an enemy were so rash as to try and enter that land secretly, then it was also a last unsleeping guard against any that might pass the vigilance of Morgul and of Shelob. That was also interesting that, like, I'm trying to think if the orcs are considered along with the slaves. Like, are the orcs also the slaves that are mentioned here rather than the servants? It's hard to say. I think so. The Nazgul are definitely servants, although I would say that they are far more slaves than the orcs because their souls are literally bound to Sauron's will. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure if I would call the Nazgul servants like he's paying them. Um, yeah, they're slaves, but I'm trying to think who wouldn't be slaves under under Sauron's view. But especially, I suppose, especially slaves. I suppose if rather we make the distinction between those who would try to escape Mordor and those who just can't. So the Nazgul can't escape what they're doing, but I imagine the orcs could if they wanted to. They don't seem to want to, but I would like him to answer that question. Well, so Shelob, the main point about Shelob is that she nets that whole place with with webbing, and so and Frodo gets stuck at one point and he has to like slash his way out. They slow you down long enough for Shelob to make her way to you because she knows where you are as soon as you ping the web. She knows where you are, and then you get run down by a giant spider. Lotro also has decided that like she just has a bunch of daughters that are also there as well. But I think they came later. She called them to her at one point or another, um, to eat them, which is a great. It's a great like. It's very funny. It's a very funny aspect. Yes. Okay. Only too clearly Sam saw how hopeless it would be for him to creep down under those many-eyed walls and pass the watchful gate, and even if he did so, He could not go far on the guarded road beyond. Not even the black shadows, lying deep where the red glow could not reach, would shield him long from the night-eyed orcs. But desperate as that road might be, his task was now far worse. Not to avoid the gate and escape, but to enter it alone. His thought turned to the ring, but there was no comfort there, only dread and danger. No sooner had he come in sight of Mount Doom, burning far away, than he was aware of a change in his burden. As it drew near the great furnaces where, in the deeps of time, it had been shaped and forged, the ring's power grew, and it became more fell, untamable save by some mighty will. As Sam stood there, even though the ring was not on him, but hanging by its chain about his neck, he felt himself enlarged, as if he were robed in a huge distorted shadow of himself, a vast and ominous threat, halted upon the walls of Mordor. He felt that he had from now on only two choices: to forbear the ring, though it would torment him, or to claim it, and challenge the power that sat in its dark hold beyond the valley of shadows. Already the ring tempted him, gnawing at his will and reason. Wild fantasies arose in his mind, and he saw Samwise, the strong, hero of the age, striding with a flaming sword across the darkened land, and armies flocking to his call as he marched to the overthrow of Barad-dûr. And then all the clouds rolled away, and the white sun shone, and at his command the vale of Gorgoroth became a garden of flowers and trees, and brought forth fruit. He had only to put on the ring, and claim it for his own, and all this could be. In that hour of trial, it was the love of Frodo that helped most to hold him firm. But also deep down in him lived still unconquered his plain hobbit sense. He knew in the core of his heart that he was not large enough to bear such a burden, even if such visions were not a mere cheat to betray him. The one small garden of a free gardener was all he needed, was all his need and due. Not a garden swollen to a realm, his own hands to use, not the hands of others to command. I'm sorry, I'm actually going to reread that bit because it's important. The one small garden of a free gardener was all his need and due, not a garden swollen to a realm. His own hands to use, not the hands of others to command. So this is very helpful. It's making my point for me. The point is that the hobbits are good because they don't want to grow above their stature, which is this kind of incredibly patronizing a view of the provincial Devonshire farmer, the provincial English farmer who is good because he doesn't try to overstep his bounds. He's not going to try to claim any power for himself because that's not his place. It's not his place. It's Aragorn's place, but it's not his place. It's I'm just making the point that like that's why Gandalf likes the hobbits. Like it's not because it's because they're doing right as they should. They are viewing like Sam is virtuous because he doesn't want to claim more power than he is like ordained to have, which is, I'm sure all of you can understand, a bad way to look at the working class. it's not how you should look at the working class. And it is the it's where this whole impression is coming from. So there's that. And also, the bit before it very helpfully encourages my view of the way the ring works, because so now we're getting told that even though Sam isn't putting on the ring, it is because it's now in sight of Mordor, in sight of Mount Doom. It is now exerting a power on him that is giving him all these visions, even though Sam himself has not actually actively wanted the ring. There's no part of Sam that's like, I want to like the ring is now giving him visions, which means that is unusual, right? Like it's not like the pull starts here. It's now that the ring is gaining power, now it's got this kind of like aura pull to it. Whereas before, i.e., when, you know, during the whole trip, it was kind of more of an inert object that really only could exert power on you if you actively started to want it for your own good reasons initially. So and this is just me being like, Boromir. It's not that Boromir was weak, it's that he had a reason to want it. And the other people had a reason to want it. Sam in this moment is like, I want to take a whole bunch of armies and attack Barad-dûr and destroy the Gorgoroth and make everything better. But Mordor has never been Sam's enemy his whole life. He has no conception of what Mordor actually could do to you, really. Even now, even after this whole journey, he actually doesn't really know what it's like to be under the thumb of Mordor. But Boromir did. He knew, and he had a very stark understanding of what it meant to want Mordor destroyed, and he had very ample reasons to want it, which is why the ring could do anything to him in the first place. So that's my point. Anyway, we'll move on. We can also address oh yes, sorry, also we're addressing the fact that the two reasons why Sam was able to resist the ring was, number one, because he was sensible and provincial. He didn't want power because he was like, you know, we didn't want power because he's a good, modest, non-ordained for power by God kind of dude. But also because he's in love with her. Like, that's it. Those are the two reasons. Did Boromir also get have a garden fancy? I don't think so. At least it's not mentioned in the kind of like the bit where it says he had a ring rant. Like there's a bit where they gloss over a lot of his dialogue. Well, Tolkien glosses over a lot of his dialogue where he just says he said these things and other things in his ring rant. I'm not entirely sure if he said. I think there was something about like reclaiming the lands and making them whole again or something. I can't quite remember. But basically it's the same. Basically it's just like he was given this and again, this also apply this is not Sam. He doesn't want this. So you could easily the only real like show that Boromir ever gives of being prideful is in his ring rant. It's when he's like, I could take the ring and I could march all my armies and I could lead everybody to victory, etc., etc. I could do this. I could be that person. But the ring is able to make you want that, because Sam doesn't want that, but the ring is able. Anyway, that's just what I needed to get out. So yes, the one small garden of a free gardener was all his need and due, not a garden swollen to a realm. His own hands to use, not the hands of others to command. And anyway, all these notions are only a trick, he said to himself. He'd spot me and cow me before I could so much as shout out. He'd spot me pretty quick if I put the ring on now in Mordor. Well, all I can say is, things look as hopeless as a frost in spring. Just when being invisible would really be useful, I can't use the ring. And if I ever get any further, it's going to be nothing but a drag and a burden every step. So what's to be done? He was not really in any doubt. He knew that he must go down the gate and not linger any more. With a shrug of his shoulders, as if to shake off the shadow and dismiss the phantoms, he began slowly to descend. With each step he seemed to diminish. He had not gone far before he had shrunk again to a very small and frightened hobbit. He was now passing under the very walls of the tower, and the cries and sounds of fighting could be heard with his unaided ears. At the moment the noise seemed to be coming from the court behind the outer wall. Sam was about halfway down the path when out of the dark gateway into the red glow there came two orcs running. They did not turn towards him, they were making for the main road, but even as they ran, they stumbled and fell to the ground and lay still. Sam had seen no arrows, but he guessed that the orcs had been shot down by others on the battlements, or hidden in the shadow of the gate. He went on, hugging the wall on his left. One look upward had shown him that there was no hope of climbing it. The stonework rose 30 feet, without a crack or ledge, to overhanging courses like inverted steps. The gate was the only way. He crept on, and as he went he wondered how many orcs lived in the tower with Shagrat, and how many Gorbag had, and what they were quarrelling about, if that was what was happening. Shagrat's company had seemed to be about 40, and Gorbag's more than twice as large, but of course Shagrat's patrol had only been a part of his garrison. Almost certainly they were quarrelling about Frodo and the spoil. For a second Sam halted, for suddenly things seemed clear to him, almost as if he had seen them with his eyes. The mithril coat! Of course, Frodo was wearing it, and they would find it, and from what Sam had heard Gorbag would covet it, but the orders of the Dark Tower were at present Frodo's only protection, and if they were set aside, Frodo might be killed out of hand at any moment. "Come on, you miserable sluggard," Sam cried to himself. "Now's for it." He drew Sting and ran towards the gate. But just as he was about to pass under its great arch, he felt a shock, as if he had run into some web like Shelob's, only invisible. He could see no obstacle, but something too strong for his will to overcome barred the way. He looked about, and then within the shadow of the gate he saw the two watchers, which we've just come to in the video very helpfully. You can't quite see them though. Might be very hard in the pixelated, but they were like great figures seated upon thrones. Each had 3 joined bodies, and 3 heads facing outward and inward and across the gateway. The heads had vulture faces, and on their great knees were laid claw-like hands. They seemed to be carved out of huge blocks of stone, immovable, and yet they were aware. Some dreadful spirit of evil vigilance abode in them. They knew an enemy. Visible or invisible, none could pass unheeded. They would forbid his entry, or his escape. Hardening his will, Sam thrust forward once again, and halted with a jerk, staggering as if from a blow upon his breast and head. Then, daring greatly, because he could think of nothing else to do, answering a sudden thought that came to him, he slowly drew out the phial of Galadriel and held it up. Its white light quickened swiftly, and the shadows under the dark arch fled. The monstrous watchers sat there cold and still, revealed in all their hideous shape. For a moment Sam caught a glitter in the black stones of their eyes, the very malice of which made him quail, but slowly he felt their will waver and crumble into fear. He sprang past them, but even as he did so, thrusting the phial back into his bosom, he was aware, as plainly as if a bar of steel had snapped to behind him, that their vigilance was renewed. And from those evil heads there came a high, shrill cry that echoed in the towering walls before him. Far up above, like an answering signal, a harsh bell clanged a single stroke. "Oh, that's done it," said Sam. "Now I've rung the front door bell. Well, come on, somebody," he cried. "Tell Captain Shagrat that the great elf warrior's called, with his elf sword too." There was no answer. Sam strode forward. Sting glittered blue in his hand. The courtyard lay in deep shadow, but he could see that the pavement was strewn with bodies. Right at his feet were the 2 orc archers with knives sticking in their backs. Beyond lay many more shapes, some singly, as they had been hewn down or shot, others in pairs, still grappling one another, dead in the very throes of stabbing, throttling, biting. The stones were slippery with dark blood. 2 liveries, Sam noticed, one marked with the red eye, the other by a moon disfigured with a ghastly face of death. But he did not stop to look more closely. Across the court a great door at the foot of the tower stood half open, and a red light came through. A large orc lay dead upon the threshold. Sam sprang over the body and went in, and then he peered about, at a loss. A wide and echoing passage led back from the door towards the mountainside. It was dimly lit with torches flaring in brackets on the walls, but its distant end was lost in gloom. Many doors and openings could be seen on this side and that, but it was empty save for 2 or 3 more bodies sprawling on the floor. From what he had heard of the captain's talk, Sam knew that, dead or alive, Frodo would most likely be found in the high chamber up in the turret far above. But he might search for a day before he found the way. It'll be near the back, I guess, Sam muttered. The whole tower climbs backwards like, and anyway, I'd better follow these lights. He advanced down the passage, but slowly now, each step more reluctant. Terror was beginning to grip him again. There was no sound save the rap of his feet, which seemed to grow to an echoing noise, like the slapping of great hands upon the stone. The dead bodies, the emptiness, the dank black walls that in the torchlight seemed to drip with blood, the fear of sudden death lurking in doorway or shadow, and behind all his mind the waiting, watchful malice at the gate. It was almost more than he could screw himself to face. He would have welcomed a fight, with not two enemies at a time, rather than this hideous brooding uncertainty. He forced himself to think of Frodo, lying bound or in pain or dead somewhere in this dreadful place, and he went on. He had passed beyond the torchlight almost to a great arched door at the end of the passage, the inner side of the undergate, as he rightly guessed, when there came from high above a dreadful choking shriek. He stopped short. Then he heard feet coming. Someone was running in great haste down an echoing stairway overhead. His will was too weak and slow to restrain his hand. It dragged at the chain and clutched the ring, but Sam did not put it on, for even as he clasped it to his breast, an orc came clattering down, leaping out of a dark opening at the right. It ran towards him. It was no more than 6 paces from him when, lifting its head, it saw him, and Sam could hear its gasping breath and see the glare in its bloodshot eyes. It stopped short, aghast. For what it saw was not a small frightened hobbit trying to hold a steady sword. It saw a great silent shape, cloaked in a grey shadow, looming against the wavering light behind. In one hand it held a sword, the very light of which was a bitter pain. The other was clutched at its breast, but held concealed some nameless power of doom and menace. For a moment the orc crouched, and then with a hideous yelp of fear it turned and fled back as it come. Never was any dog more heartened when its enemy turned tail than Sam at this unexpected flight. With a shout he gave chase. "Yes, the elf warrior's loose," he cried. "I'm coming, just you show me the way up or I'll skin you." But the orc was in its own haunts, nimble and well fed. Sam was a stranger, hungry and weary. The stairs were high and steep and winding. Its breath began to come in gasps. The orc had soon passed out of sight, and now only faintly could be heard the slapping of its feet as it went on up. Every now and again it gave a yell, and the echo ran along the walls, but slowly all sound of it died away. Sam plodded on. He felt that he was on the right road, and his spirits had risen a good deal. He thrust the ring away and tightened his belt. "Well, well," he said, "if only they all take such a dislike to me and my sting, this may turn out better than I hoped. And anyway, it looks as if Shagrat, Gorbag, and company have done nearly all my job for me. Except for that little frightened rat, I do believe there's nobody alive left in this place." With that he stopped, brought up hard, as if he had hit his head against the stone wall. The full meaning of what he had said struck him like a blow. Nobody left alive? Whose had been that horrible dying shriek? "Oh, Frodo, Frodo," he cried, half sobbing, "if they've killed you, what shall I do? Well, I'm coming at last, right to the top to see what I must." Up he went. It was dark save for an occasional torch flaring at a turn, or beside some opening that led into higher levels of the tower. Sam tried to count the steps, but after 200 he lost his reckoning. He was moving quietly now, for he thought that he could hear the sound of voices talking, still some way above. More than one rat remained alive, it seemed. All at once, when he felt that he could pump out no more breath, nor force his knees to bend again, the stairs ended. He stood still. The voices were now loud and clear. Sam peered about. He had climbed right to the flat roof of the third and highest tier of the tower, an open space about 20 yards across, with a low parapet. There the stair was covered by a small domed chamber in the midst of the roof, with low doors facing east and west. Eastward Sam could see the plain of Mordor, vast and dark below, and the burning mountain far away. A fresh turmoil was surging in its deep wells, and the rivers of fire blazed so fiercely that even at this distance of many miles the light of them lit the top tower with a red glare. Westward the view was blocked by the base of the great turret that stood at the back of this upper court, and reared its horn high above the crest of the encircling hills. Light gleamed in the window slit. Its door was not 10 yards from where Sam stood. It was open but dark, and from just within its shadow the voices came. At first Sam did not listen. He took a pace out of the eastward door and looked about. At once he saw that up here the fighting had been fiercest. All the court was choked with dead orcs, all their severed and scattered heads and limbs. The place stank of death. A snarl followed by a blow, and a cry sent him darting back into hiding. An orc voice rose in anger, and he knew it once again, and he knew it again at once. Harsh, brutal, cold. It was Shagrat speaking, captain of the tower. Alright, voice another orc, and a drink of water. Right.
You won't go again, you say? Curse you, Snagger, you little maggot. If you think I'm so damaged that it's safe to flout me, you're mistaken. Come here, and I'll squeeze your eyes out like I did to Radbug just now. And when some new lads come, I'll deal with you. I'll send you to Shelob.
They won't come, not before you're dead anyway, answered Snagger surlily. I've told you twice that Gorbag's swine got to the gate first, and none of ours got out. Lagduff and Mazguj ran through, but they were shot. I saw it from a window, I tell you, and they were the last.
Then you must go. I must stay here anyway. But I'm hurt. The black pits take that filthy rebel Gorbag.
Shagrat's voice trailed off into a string of foul names and curses.
I gave him better than I got, but he knifed me the dung before I throttled him. You must go or I'll eat you. The news must get through to Lugbers, or we'll both be for the black pits. Yes, you too. You won't escape by skulking here. I'm not going down those stairs again, growled Snagger. Be you captain or no? Nah, keep your hands off your knife, or I'll put an arrow in your guts. You won't be captain long when they hear about all these goings-on. I fought for the tower against those stinking Morgul rats, but a nice mess you two precious captains have made of things, fighting over the swag.
Well, that's enough out of you, snarled Shagrat. I had my orders. It was Gorbag started it, trying to pinch that pretty shirt.
Well, you put his back up, being so high and mighty.
I love this so much somehow. It's just so funny. He put his back up. He put his back up. He was just too mean about it.
Well, you put his back up being so high and mighty, and he had more sense than you anyway. He told you more than once that the most dangerous of these spies was still loose, and you wouldn't listen, and you won't listen now. Gorbag was right, I tell you. There's a great fighter about, one of those bloody-handed elves, or one of the filthy Tarks. He's coming here, I tell you. You heard the bell. He's got past the watchers, and that's Tark's work. He's on the stairs, and until he's off them, I'm not going down. Not if you were a Nazgul, I wouldn't. So that's it, is it? Yelled Shagrat. You'll do this, and you'll not do that, and when he does come, you'll bolt and leave me. No, you won't. I'll put maggot holes in your belly first. I just want to say, I didn't address the watchers before because I wanted to get to this bit. So I was okay. So the Kirit Ungul, the tower is built, but it's Gondorian built. But I cannot, in my wildest dreams, imagine that they would make these terrible statues. I have to imagine that the statues are a later addition by Mordor, because not only because like the like design of them is so, it seems so heretical, like idolatry kind of devil worship shit, like vulture heads and three bodies, and they all look in different ways, and they're sitting on a throne, etc., etc. I have to assume that that was Mordor design, Mordor architecture, and especially because like the spirits within them as well are like evil specifically. I don't think they symbolize Manway. I just don't think that they'd symbolize Manway as a vulture. I mean, unless they were originally like eagles and then they got chipped down into vultures, maybe I could see, but I don't think that's the case. I think that because the other thing is that watchers. So this is why I stopped here. So Snaga says that getting past watchers
is Tark's work, and Tark, if you don't know, is like this derogatory term. It's a Dunedain slur. It's a slur for the Dunedain, which is very funny. But so if that's Tark's work, I have to assume that like because the other thing is as soon as I read this, I was like, why aren't there watchers on the Black Gate? Like, why aren't there like surely they would put them everywhere? But my idea is that Gondorians are good at getting they got past these and probably destroyed a lot of them. So there's not that many left. There's not that many of these evil statues left in Mordor's like vaults. And I have to assume that the reason they're here is just because they got a lot of orcs to carry them up here. They just kind of pulled them on, on the log of the log moving method, and they just pulled them along, and then they sat them here. But I just it's there's a lot of lore in that section. It's like watches have always been an issue, and Dunedain figured out a way to get past them and probably also to destroy them. But I know, but it's I mean possible, but it's also, but I think it's more explanatory if they if it's like a known thing that because like it's very specific, like saying the Watchers are the what getting past the Watchers is Tark work. But anyway, like you're right, but I think mine explains more of what the hell the Watchers are and why they don't have them everywhere. As I certainly would if I had enough of them. So, yeah. Out of the turret door, the smaller orc came flying. Behind him came Shagrat, a large orc with long arms that, as he ran crouching, reached to the ground. But one arm hung limp and seemed to be bleeding. The other hugged a large black bundle. In the red glare, Sam, cowering behind the stair door, caught a glimpse of his evil face as it passed. It was scored as if by rending claws, and smeared with blood. Slaver dribbled from his protruding fangs. The mouth snarled like an animal. As far as Sam could see, Shagrat hunted Snaga around the roof, until, ducking and eluding him, the smaller orc with a yelp darted back into the turret and disappeared. Then Shagrat halted. Out of the eastern door, Sam could see him now by the parapet, panting, his left claw clenching and unclenching feebly. He put the bundle on the floor and, with his right claw, drew out a long red knife and spat on it. Going to the parapet, he leaned over, looking down into the outer courtyard far below. Twice he shouted, but no answer came. Suddenly, as Shagrat was stooped over the battlement, his back to the rooftop, Sam, to his amazement, saw that one of the sprawling bodies was moving. It was crawling. It put out a claw and clutched the bundle. It staggered up. In its other hand it held a broad-headed spear with a short broken haft. It was poised for a stabbing thrust, but at that very moment a hiss escaped its teeth, a gasp of pain or hate. Quick as a snake, Shagrat slipped aside, twisted round, and drove his knife into his enemy's throat.
"Got you, Gorebag!" he cried. "Not quite dead, eh? Well, I'll finish my job now."
He sprang onto the fallen body and stamped and trampled it in his fury, stooping low now and again to stab and slash it with his knife. Satisfied at last, he threw back his head and let out a horrible gurgling yell of triumph. Then he licked his knife and put it between his teeth, and catching up the bundle, he came loping towards the near door of the stairs. Sam had no time to think. He might have slipped out the other door, but hardly without being seen, and he could not have played hide and seek with this hideous orc for long. He did what was probably the best thing he could have done. He sprang out to meet Shagrat with a shout. He was no longer holding the ring, but it was there, a hidden power, a cowing menace to the slaves of Mordor. And in his hand was Sting, and its light smote the eyes of the orc like the glitter of cruel stars in the terrible elf countries. Yes, they are terrible. The dream of which was a cold fear to his kind. And Shagrat could not both fight and keep hold of his treasure. He stopped, growling, baring his fangs. Then once more, orc fashion, he leapt aside, and as Sam sprang at him, using the heavy bundle as both shield and weapon, he thrust it hard into his enemy's face. Sam staggered, and before he could recover, Shagrat darted past and down the stairs. Sam ran after him, cursing, but he did not go far. Soon the thought of Frodo returned to him, and he remembered that the other orc had gone back into the turret. Here was another dreadful choice. He had no time to ponder it. If Shagrat got away, he would soon get help and come back. But if Sam pursued him, the other orc might do some horrible deed up there. And anyway, Sam might miss Shagrat or be killed by him. He turned quickly and ran back up the stair. Wrong again, I expect, he sighed. But it's my job to go right up to the top first, whatever happens afterwards. Away below, Shagrat went leaping down the stairs and out over the court and through the gate, bearing his precious burden. If Sam could have seen him and known the grief that his escape would bring, he might have quailed, but now his mind was set on the last stage of his search. See, okay, this bit is about literally because so Shagrat has got away with the mithril coat, which then gets given to the mouth of Sauron, and then makes Gandalf sad. It really doesn't do anything else. like it does nothing else. Like it's I don't think Sam would quail about that. Like I think it's okay for Gandalf and the rest of them to be sad and to think that like it's fine. Frodo can they can think that Frodo's dead for a bit. I think it's actually okay. It doesn't do anything else. It just makes them sad. They all still fight, and it all still turns out fine. They were just a little sad because they thought Frodo was dead for a while. They can do it. I believe in them. They can get over it. But now his mind was set on the last stage of his search. He came cautiously to the turret door and stepped inside. It opened into darkness, but soon his staring eyes were aware of a dim light at his right hand. It came from an opening that led to another stairway, dark and narrow. It appeared to go winding up the turret along the inside of its round outer wall. A torch was glimmering on it from somewhere up above. Softly, Sam began to climb. He came to the guttering torch fixed above a door on his left that faced a window slit looking out westward, one of the red eyes that he and Frodo had seen from down below by the tunnel's mouth. Quickly, Sam passed the door and hurried on to the second story, dreading at any moment to be attacked and to feel throttling fingers seize his throat from behind. He came next to a window looking east and another torch above the door to a passage through the middle of the turret. The door was open, the passage dark save for the glimmer of the torch and the red glare from outside filtering through the window slit. But here the stair stopped and climbed no further. Sam crept into the passage. On either side there was a low door. Both were closed and locked. There was no sound at all. A dead end, muttered Sam, and after all my climb, this can't be the top of the tower, but what can I do now? He ran back to the lower story and tried the door. It would not move. He ran up again, and sweat began to trickle down his face. He felt that even minutes were precious, but one by one they escaped, and he could do nothing. He cared no longer for Shagrat or Snargot or any other orc that was ever spawned. He longed only for Frodo. Moment of silence for he longed only for Frodo. It does say his master here. Listen, I am replacing master. That's the only thing I'm doing. I'm replacing master with Frodo, but it says he longed for him. But anyway. No worries, Alexander. Have a good time. Have a good night. Thank you for coming. Yeah. He longed only for Frodo. For one sight of his face, or one touch of his hand. Sorry, I actually forgot that it kept going. He longed only for Frodo, for one sight of his face, or one touch of his hand. But think of Frodo and Sam. It's the most platonic relationship in the book. They just like each other. That's all. That's all it is. At last, weary and feeling finally defeated, he sat at the step below the level of the passage floor and bowed his head into his hands. It was quiet, horribly quiet. The torch that was already burning low when he arrived sputtered and went out, and he felt the darkness cover him like a tide. And then slowly, softly, to his own surprise, there at the vain end of his long journey and his grief, moved by what thought in his heart he could not tell, Sam began to sing. Exactly, normal servant behavior. His voice sounded thin and quavering in the cold, dark tower, the voice of a forlorn and weary hobbit that no listening orc could possibly mistake for the clear song of an elven lord. He murmured old childish tunes out of the Shire, and snatches of Mr. Bilbo's rhymes that came into his mind like fleeting glimpses of the country of his home. And then suddenly, new strength rose in him, and his voice rang out, while words of his own came unbidden to fit the simple tune. Okay. It's song time. Let me. Okay. In western lands beneath the sun, the flowers may rise in spring, the trees may bud, the waters run, the merry finches sing. Or there may be 'tis cloudless night, and swaying beeches bear the elven stars as jewels white amid their branching hair. Though here at journey's end I lie in darkness buried deep, beyond all towers strong and high, beyond all mountains steep, above all shadows rides the sun, and stars forever dwell. I will not say the day is done, nor bid the stars farewell. There you go. So the thing is that this obviously this is a very popular song. It's very people know about this song quite well. So there were a lot of covers of it, and Clamavity Profundus has already done a cover. However, it does say at the top, it says simple tune, which I did not think fitted Clamavity Profundus's orchestrated multi-voiced magnum opus of this song. So I actually was using the one that they made up for the radio play, which actually worked really well, and I was really pleased with it. Thank you very much, Freckles. Okay. Beyond all towers strong and high, he began again, and then he stopped short. He thought that he heard a faint voice answering him, but now he could hear nothing. Yes, he could hear something, but not a voice. Footsteps were approaching. Now a door was being opened quietly in the passage above. The hinges creaked. Sam crouched down, listening. The door closed with a dull thud, and then a snarling orc voice rang out. Sorry, before I go on, we just have to acknowledge the fact that this concept of like somebody trying to rescue somebody else sits and sings somewhere, and then they are responded to, happens 3 times in the whole Tolkien canon. I'm pretty sure only 3 times. It happens. Sam and Frodo do it. Maethros and Fingon do it, and Luthien and Beren do it. Which is it's a normal theme. Servant master, usual. I would do that if someone was paying me to wait on them hand and foot. This is the kind of energy I would bring. It's just there's nothing romantic about it. There's nothing romantic about it at all. It's fine. Oh yes, and then the subsequent loss of a body part. I totally forgot. Yeah, exactly. The Luthien Baron Maethros Fingon Sam and Frodo thing that they all do, and the Eagles. Wow. I said that this is great because actually somebody on Tumblr like made this gift set that was literally like Frodo and Sam but with Luthien and Beren things plastered over the top of it, which is so funny to me because it's like Aragorn is so desperate for him and Arwen to be like, well, Luthien and Beren again, when their story has really no relation to Luthien and Beren, like their actual relationship and has nothing to do with them. It's really very different from Luthien and Beren. Meanwhile, Sam and Frodo almost a perfect exemplification. I mean, no, but like this bit especially, it's got more relevance than Aragorn and Arwen do anyway. And I would like someone to tell I would like someone to tell Aragorn that. I want someone to show Aragorn that gift set. He would hate it, and I think it would be good for him to look at it. I think it'd be good. Anyway, the door closed with a dull thud, and then a snarling orc voice rang out.
Hola, you up there, you dunghill rat! Stop your squeaking, or I'll come up and deal with you, do you hear?
There was no answer.
All right, growled Snogger, but I'll come and have a look at you all the same and see what you're up to.
The hinges creaked again, and Sam, now peering over the corner of the passage threshold, saw a flicker of light in an open doorway, and the dim shape of an orc coming out. He seemed to be carrying a ladder. Suddenly the answer dawned on Sam. The topmost passage was reached by a trap door in the roof of the passage. Snugger thrust the ladder upwards, steadying it, and then clambered out of sight. Sam heard a bolt drawn back. Then he heard a hideous voice speaking again.
You lie quiet or you'll pay for it. You're not long to live in peace, I guess, but if you don't want the fun to begin right now, keep your trap shut, see? There's a reminder for you.
There was a sound like a crack of a whip. At that, rage blazed in Sam's heart to a sudden fury. He sprang up, ran, and went up the ladder like a cat. His head came out in the middle of the floor of a round, large chamber. A red lamp hung from its roof. The westward window slit was high and dark. Something was lying on the floor by the wall under the window, but over it a black orc shape was straddled. It raised a whip a second time, but the blow never fell. With a cry, Sam leapt across the floor, sting in hand. The orc wheeled about, but before it could make a move, Sam slashed its whip hand from its arm. Howling with pain and fear, but desperate, the orc charged, head down at him. Sam's next blow went wide, and thrown off his balance, he fell backwards, clutching at the orc as it stumbled over him. Before he could scramble up, he heard a cry and a thud. The orc, in its wild haste, had tripped on the ladder head and fallen through the open trapdoor. Sam gave no thought to it. He ran to the figure huddled on the floor. It was Frodo. Also a moment of silence to think of how many fucking hands hobbits cut off of orcs. Like, first, it's Merry. Like, it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. There's a lot going on in a hand and in a wrist that it surely shouldn't be that easy to hack a hand off, but hobbits do it. They're Jedi. That's what I'm saying. Hobbits, Jedi, taking off lots of hands. Another drink. Oh, actually, I think my supper's ready. I think I'm gonna go down and get me supper, and then I'll be back. So back in a second. We're breaking for 11 is. Right. I am back. I'll stay for a brief break so I can have some bites. Is it buffering at all, Raklos? I suppose I need to change the breaking for 11s to just breaking for 7. That's the time I do these kinds of things. Oh. The drop frames have gone back down to 48%, which is a good, perfectly reasonable frame error. Oh, it is? It's buffering? Ah. Ah, well. I'm so sorry. Well, no, it might be me. Yeah. That's what I thought. Gardens are just for... They're just for Sam. Did you hear about Carl Hosteter's homophobic Facebook post? Ragloss. The writer of Nature of Middle Earth. Well, the compiler of Nature of Middle Earth. Oh no. Well, I mean, if it's buffering, maybe actually, if we've been going for an hour. We have actually been going for an hour and a half. And my head's a bit weird. No. No, says Rycross. Disallowed. Oh no, I see. No, no, you haven't. No, you haven't read his Facebook page. Yes, well, yeah, it was just it was part of the preamble. We were talking about the fact that we were talking about he's very mad that people think Melatorni and Melafeldi is about gay people. Oh, okay, all right then, if you say. Ah, I'll do it. I'm not entirely sure what low latency mode even does. It's very, very peculiar. I'm nearly finished eating. I'll be back with you in a second. Alrighty then. Okay. So we got to Frodo. Hello, Jamie. You've just arrived. You've just arrived in at at where we've just arrived at the part at the part where Sam has found Frodo. Reckless. It doesn't that doesn't surprise me that you found a miserable Catholic blog on Tumblr that claimed to have spoken to Carl Hostetter about the gay issue when the book came out, confirming that of course it's not gay. Of course it's not. Oh, well, I mean, then you and well, Jamie, then you and I were not having a very different experience. It does sound enjoyable. I'm good. I'm good. I hope you had a good time. Yeah. Right. But yes. Okay. So we've got to. Frodo has been found. Sam has found Frodo. But we haven't gotten past all the gay shit yet. So. Ah. He was naked, lying as if in a swoon on a heap of filthy rags. His arm was flung up, shielding his head, and across his side there rang an ugly whip wheel. Frodo, Frodo, my dear, cried Sam, tears almost blinding him. It's Sam, I've come. He half lifted Frodo and hugged him to his breast, and his eyes opened. Am I still dreaming? He muttered. But the other dreams are horrible. You're not dreaming at all, Frodo, said Sam. It's real. It's me. I've come. I can hardly believe it, said Frodo, clutching him. It was an orc with a whip, and then it turns into Sam. Then I wasn't dreaming after all when I heard that singing down below and I tried to answer. Was it you? It was, Frodo. I'd given up hope almost. I couldn't find you. Well, you have now, Sam, dear Sam, said Frodo, and he lay back in Sam's gentle arms, closing his eyes, like a child at rest when night fears are driven away by some loved voice or hand. Sam felt that he could sit like that in an endless happiness. Just an endless happiness. But it's just very heterosexual, is the thing. You've got to. Depravity, exactly that nude. He's. Well, Frodo. It's just. It's all he wanted to do was. Was lie in the loving arms of Sam, and Sam was like, I could do this forever. And Tolkien looks me in the eye and he says, this is meant to be read as platonic. Amazing. I can't remember. He is naked in the film as well, yes, but they don't cradle each other because Peter Jackson is a coward. My enemy. Anyway, so Sam felt like he could sit like this forever in an endless happiness, but it was not allowed. It was not allowed, is the thing. Depravity. It's not allowed. It was not enough for him to find Frodo. He still had to try and save him. He kissed his head. Come, wake up, Frodo, he said, trying to sound as cheerful as he had when he drew back the curtains at Bag End on a summer's morning. Again. Again. What? Frodo sighed and sat up. Where are we? How did I get here? He asked. Well, there's no time for tales till we get somewhere else, Frodo, he said, Sam. But you're at the top of that tower me and you saw from the way down by the tunnel before the orcs got you. How long ago that was, I don't know, more than a day, I guess. Only that? said Frodo. It seems weeks. You must tell me all about it if we get the chance. Something hit me, didn't it? And I fell into darkness and foul dreams and woke and found that waking was worse. Orcs were all around me. I think that they had been pouring some horrible burning drink down my throat. My head grew clear, but I was aching and weary, and they stripped me of everything, and then two great brutes came and questioned me until I thought I should go mad, standing over me, gloating, fingering their knives. I'll never forget their claws and eyes. You won't if you talk about them, Frodo, said Sam, and if we don't want to see them again, the sooner that we get going, the better. Can you walk? Yes, I can walk, said Frodo, getting up slowly. I'm not hurt, Sam. I only feel very tired, and I have a pain here. He put his hand to the back of his neck above his left shoulder. He wears pants in the movie? Cowards! Cowards! Can't believe it. Oh, so the extended edition of the Hobbit, the more childish book, says that the dwarves can be fully nude, but Frodo, in his tower, when Sam is cradling him in his arms and he has never known such happiness, can't be. Interesting. Anyway. He put his hand to the back of his neck above his left shoulder. He stood up, and it looked to Sam as if he was... Okay, here, listen. Listen to this. Why did Sam write this? Because this is Sam writing it, okay? Sam is writing this bit. He stood up, and it looked to Sam as if he was clothed in flame. His naked skin was scarlet in the lamp of the light above. What? Why would Sam took a pen and put it on, and he said, no, they need to know. They need to know what Frodo looked like. They need to know. The world needs to know what Frodo looked like when he stood up in that middle of that tower. This, very important. Everybody needs to hear it. I'm going to write it down in my big red book. Frodo gave me the book, and I'm like, I have to write this down. I'm going to write it down. Twice he paced across the floor. That's better, he said, his spirits rising a little. I didn't dare to move when I was left alone, or one of the guards come, until the yelling and fighting began. The two big brutes, they quarrelled, I think, over me and my things. I lay there terrified, and then all went deadly quiet, and that was worse. Yes, they quarrelled seemingly, said Sam. There must have been a couple of hundred of the dirty creatures in this place. A bit of a tall order for Sam Gamgee, as you might say, but they've done all the killing of themselves. That's lucky, but it's too long to make a song about till we're out of here. Now, what's to be done? You can't go walking in the Black Land in naught but your skin, Frodo. Well, they've taken everything, Sam, said Frodo. Everything I had. Do you understand? Everything. He cowered on the floor again with a bowed head as his words brought home to him the fullness of the disaster, and despair overwhelmed him. The quest has failed, Sam. Even if we get out of here, we can't escape. Only elves can escape. Away, away, out of Middle-earth, far over the sea, if even that is wide enough to keep the shadow out. Well, no, not everything, Frodo. It hasn't failed, not yet. I took it, begging your pardon, and I've kept it safe. It's round my neck now, and a terrible burden it is too. Sam fumbled for the ring and its chain. But I suppose you must take it back. Now it had come to it, Sam felt reluctant to give up the ring and burden Frodo with it again. You've got it? Gasped Frodo. You've got it here? Sam, you're a marvel. Then quickly and strangely his tone changed. Give it to me, he cried, standing up, holding out a trembling hand. Give it to me at once. You can't have it. It's all right, Frodo, said Sam, rather startled. Here it is. Slowly he drew the ring out and passed the chain over his head. But you're in the land of Mordor now, and when you get out you'll see that fiery mountain and all. You'll find the ring very dangerous now, and very hard to bear. If it's too hard a job, I could share it with you, maybe. No, no, cried Frodo, snatching the ring and chain from Sam's hand. No, you won't, thief! He panted, staring at Sam with eyes wide with fear and enmity. Then suddenly, clasping the ring in one clenched fist, he stood aghast. A mist seemed to clear from his eyes, and he passed a hand over his aching brow. His hideous vision had seemed so real. Half bemused as he was still with wound and fear, Sam had changed before his very eyes into an orc again, leering and pawing at his treasure, a foul little creature with greedy eyes and slobbering mouth. But now the vision had passed. There was Sam, kneeling before him, his face wrung with pain as if he had been stabbed in the heart. Anyway, tears welled from his eyes. Oh, Sam, cried Frodo, what have I said? What have I done? Oh, forgive me, after all you have done. It is the horrible power of the ring. I wish it had never been found. Don't mind me, Sam. I must carry the burden to the end. It can't be altered. You can't come between me and this doom. That's all right, Frodo, said Sam, rubbing his sleeve across his eye. I understand, but I can still hope, can't I? I've got to get you out of here at once, see? But first you want some clothes and gear, and then some food. And clothes will be the easiest part, as we're in Mordor. We'd best dress up Mordor fashion, and anyway, there isn't no choice. It'll have to be the orc stuff for you, Mr. Frodo, I'm afraid, and for me too. If we go together, we'd best match. Now put this round you. Sam unclasped the grey cloak and cast it about Frodo's shoulders. Then, unslinging his pack, he laid it out on the floor. He drew Sting from its sheath. Hardly a flicker was to be seen on its blade. I was forgetting this, Frodo, he said.
No, they didn't get everything. You lent me Sting, if you remember, and the lady's glass. I've got them both still, and lend them to me a little. But lend them to me a little longer, Frodo. I must go and see what I can find. You stay here. Walk about a bit. Ease your legs. I shan't be long. I shan't have to go far. Take care, Sam, said Frodo, and be quick. There may be orcs still alive lurking in wait. I've got a chance, said Sam. He stepped to the trap door and slipped down the ladder. In a minute his head reappeared. He threw a long knife on the floor. There's something that might be useful, he said. He's dead, the one that whipped you. Broke his neck, it seems, in his hurry. Now you draw up the ladder if you can, and don't you let it down until you hear me call the password. Elbereth, I'll call. What the elves say. No orc would say that.
They should have given us Creepy Sam in the movies like Creepy Bilbo, you're right. I would have liked to see Sam from Frodo's perspective. Frodo sat for a while and shivered, dreadful fears chasing one another through his mind. Then he got up and drew the grey elven cloak about him, and to keep his mind occupied, began to walk to and fro, prying and peering into every corner of his prison. It was not very long, though fear made it seem an hour at least, before he heard Sam's voice calling softly from below, Elbereth, Elbereth. Frodo let down the light ladder. Up came Sam, puffing, heaving a great bundle on his head. He let it fall with a thud. Quick now, he said. I've had a bit of a search to find anything small enough for the likes of us. We'll have to make do. But we must hurry. I've met nothing alive, and I've seen nothing, but I'm not easy. I think this place is being watched. I can't explain it, but, well, it feels to me as if one of those foul flying riders was about, up in the blackness where he can't be seen. He opened the bundle. Frodo looked in disgust at the contents, but there was nothing for it. He had to put the things on or go naked. There were long hairy breeches and some unclean beast fell, and a tunic of dirty leather. He drew them on. Over the tunic went a coat of stout ring mail, short for a full-sized orc, too long for Frodo and heavy. About it he clasped a belt, at which there hung a short sheath holding a broad-bladed stabbing sword. Sam had brought several orc helmets. One of them fit Frodo well enough, a black cap with iron rim, and iron hoops covered with leather upon which the evil eye was painted in red above a beak-like nose guard. The Morgul stuff, Gorbag's gear, was a better fit and better made, said Sam, but it won't do, I guess, to go carrying around tokens into Mordor, not after this business here. Well, there you are, Frodo, a perfect little orc, if I may make so bold. At least you would be if we could cover your face with a mask, give you longer arms, and make you bow-legged. This will hide you from the telltales. He put a large black cloak around Frodo's shoulders. Now you're ready. We can pick up a shield as we go. What about you, Sam? Said Frodo. Aren't we going to match? Well, I've been thinking, said Sam. I'd best not leave any of my stuff behind. We can't destroy it, and I can't wear orc mail over all my clothes, can I? I'll just have to cover up. He knelt down and carefully folded his elven cloak. It went into a surprisingly small roll. This he put into his pack and lay on the floor. Standing up, he slung it behind his back, put an elk helm on his head, and cast another black cloak about his shoulders. There, he said. Now we match. Near enough. And now we must be off. I can't go all the way at a run, Sam, said Frodo with a wry smile. I hope you've made inquiries about inns along the road, or have you forgotten about food and drink? Oh, save me, so I had, said Sam. He whistled in dismay. Oh, bless me, Frodo, but you've gone and made me that hungry and thirsty. I don't know when drop or morsel last passed my lips. I've forgotten it trying to find you. Well, let me think. Last time I looked, I'd got about enough of that whey bread and of what Captain Faramir gave us, and to keep me on my legs for a couple of weeks at a pinch. But if there's a drop left in my bottle, there's no more. That's not going to be enough for two, nohow. Don't orcs eat? Don't they drink? Or do they live on foul air and poison? No, they eat and drink, Sam. The shadow that bred them can only mock. It cannot make, not real new things of its own. I don't think it gave life to the orcs. It only ruined them and twisted them. And if they are to live at all, they are to live like other living things. Foul waters and foul meats they take, if they can get no better, but not poison. They fed me, and so I'm better off than you. There must be food and water somewhere in this place. But there's no time to look for 'em, said Sam. Well, things are a bit better than you think, said Frodo. I have had a bit of luck while you were away. Indeed, they did not take everything. I found my food bag among some rags on the floor.
They've rummaged it, of course, but I think they disliked the very look and smell of the lembas, worse than Gollum did. It's scattered about, and some of it's trampled and broken, but I've gathered it together. It's not far short of what you've got, but they've taken Faramir's food, and they've slashed up my water bottle. Well, there's no more to be said, said Sam. We've got enough to start on, but the water's going to be a bad business. Oh, but come, Frodo, off we go, or a whole lake of it won't do us any good. Not till you've had a mouthful, Sam, said Frodo. I won't budge. Here, take this elven cake and drink that last drop in your bottle. The whole thing is quite hopeless, so it's no good worrying about tomorrow. It probably won't come. Very sullen hobbit noises. At last they started. Down the ladder they climbed, and then Sam took it and laid it in the passage beside the huddled body of the fallen orc. The stair was dark, but on the rooftop the glare of the mountain could still be seen, though it was dying down now to a sullen red. They picked up 2 shields to complete their disguise, and then went down. Down the great stairway they plodded. The high chamber of the turret behind, where they had met again, seemed almost homely. They were out in the open again now, and terror ran along the walls. All might be dead in the tower of Kirit Ungul, but it was steeped in fear, and evil still. At length they came to the door upon the outer court, and they halted. Even from where they stood, they felt the malice of the watchers beating down on them, black silent shapes of either side of the gate through which the glare of Mordor dimly showed. As they threaded their way among the hideous bodies of the orcs, each step became more difficult. Before they could even reach the archway, they were brought to a stand. To move an inch further was a pain and a weariness to will and limb. Frodo had no strength for such a battle. He sank to the ground. "Can't go on, Sam," he murmured. "I'm going to faint. I don't know what's come over me." "Oh, I do, Frodo. Hold up now, it's the gate. There's some devilry there, but I've got through, and I'm going to get out. It can't be more dangerous than before. Now's for it." Sam threw out the elven glass of Galadriel again, as if to do honour to his hardihood and to grace with splendour his faithful brown hobbit hand,